11 years, was a Pro Bowler 10 of them. So, and by the way, I thought last time I saw you had big bushy hair. I don't know. Have you cut it all off? What's going on there, Joe? I like the look. It's very sturdy.
Yeah, you must have been involved in my dreams because I had a lot of great hair the last time I fell asleep and had one of those wonderful dreams at night.
Hey, let me ask you. I was right on the Baker thing, blah, blah, blah. But I will say this, whatever. And my thing, Joe, was always, I thought he was too turbulent for a dysfunctional organization. I thought Matt Ryan in Cleveland, that's what Cleveland needs, is not a lot of dysfunction. So now you get Deshaun Watson, who's better than Baker, but man, there's a lot of noise. We got civil suits. It's a massive contract. How is it playing this morning in Cleveland? How is Deshaun in Cleveland playing?
Well, I think it's playing the same way that it's playing throughout the country, right? A lot of people are a little bit upset about this, upset about this. There's fans that are really excited in Cleveland because they see what Deshaun Watson can do for this franchise. He's clearly the best quarterback that they probably have ever had in the Super Bowl era. And he gives them an opportunity as legitimate Super Bowl contenders. He's a guy that's a tier 1 quarterback that is just entering the prime of his life. But you can't talk about who Deshaun Watson is on the field without talking about those 22 sexual misconduct allegations that he's continuing to face. And so as fans, we're conflicted, right? We want to be behind our team. We cheer for the orange helmet and typically all the players that are playing under that orange helmet. But when you have a person that has this off-field issue, which is huge that he's dealing with, you're conflicted. I mean, it's not like you're having that victory parade that you usually have when you get a player of Deshaun Watson's caliber.
I was talking to Mary Kay Cabot, and she said there were stories that came out that Baker was going to hold out. He was furious with how they were treating him. He was going to hold out. When that story gets out, I can see Cleveland fans sort of, like, hey, dude, we had your back. Come on now. We gave you some really good pieces, a good O-line, and we went and got OBJ. We went and got Jarvis Landry. This morning, the favorability rating for Baker Mayfield, now that it's all, they're going to move him eventually, right? They're not going to move him in division or anything. You probably won't see much of him in Cleveland. What's Baker's favorability rating as he leaves town here pretty soon?
Well, it's going down, Colin. I think people in Cleveland were so starved for a winner. They were starved for a franchise quarterback that we all wanted to believe that Baker could be that guy. And so what happens is you have people that really believe Baker was the guy, that were the most vocal pieces of the fan base. And then the people that maybe were a little bit skeptical or didn't like him for whatever reason, or just didn't think he was that good of a quarterback, they weren't willing to be vocal because they were afraid to be wrong, right? You don't want to be wrong for the first time in many decades about the position that you need most when you're a Cleveland Browns fan that has dealt with 1-31. And I think initially that was part of maybe why you heard a lot of negative reactions from the Browns fans, is not only are you bringing in a guy who's dealing with a lot of controversy in Deshaun Watson, but you're kicking a guy out of town, Baker Mayfield, who a lot of fans felt like he was one of them. He wanted to be in Cleveland when nobody else wanted to be there. He was somebody that was all in on this team. And he famously said while he was throwing Duke Johnson under the bus, hey, you're either with us or you're against us. You're either on this train or you're not. So now as the information that surrounds around the trade is getting out, there's a lot more people who are being vocal in Cleveland saying, hey, maybe I didn't really like Baker all that much because part of the reason I loved him was because of how much he loved Cleveland. He wanted to be here. He was willing to sacrifice everything to bring us a championship. And maybe that was not the case like we thought it was.
Yeah. So when you look at the Bengals had a great run last year, and they've had a very good offseason. They really attacked with absolute clarity their offensive line, upgraded at right tackle, upgraded at guard. That makes things, so their offense now is set. They got the back. They've got the quarterback, the weapons. They can really attack the defense in the draft overwhelmingly. Let's go solve. And it wasn't bad, by the way. They had a nice pass rush last year. But, having played your football in Ohio, Brown fans, one of the only teams they could ever pick on was Cincinnati, right? That was one you could go, yeah, well, you think we have issues. They got issues too. What do you make of the end of last year for the Bengals and what they're doing? Are the days of laughing at the Bengals over as somebody who now resides in Ohio?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to say part of the reason Baker is not the Cleveland Browns quarterback anymore is because of what people in Ohio and what people in Berea saw that Cincinnati was able to do when they got a franchise quarterback. And then also what Baker Mayfield sort of did to himself with his prickliness, especially at the end, and how they said, we don't want this with this performance. We want a guy like Joe Burrow, who by all accounts is a tremendous leader. The locker room loves him. The city loves everything he's doing. And he says and does all the right things in that situation. And that franchise is set up for the next 10 to 20 years with that guy because of who they have at quarterback. And they're going to be legitimate Super Bowl contenders as long as they're able to manage the cap down the line because, like you mentioned, tons of weapons at receiver. Now they're addressing the offensive line, which was the biggest concern in the Super Bowl and largely why they lost the Super Bowl. And that defense, one of the most unheralded defenses in the NFL.
Yeah.
We didn't really know a lot of those names, but they played together. They had a synergy about them on defense that made them better than the sum of the parts. And I think that's why they were so good down the stretch in the playoffs, because playoffs is a matchup game. It's a one loss and you're done game. And with that playoff system, you're going to go against teams that maybe want to throw the ball down the field. Maybe they're really solid on defense. Maybe they have a really good running game. And when your defense is flexible, like the Cincinnati Bengals, where they have a lot of guys that can do a lot of things really well, that makes you the best defense when it comes playoff time.
Only offensive lineman to make 10 straight Pro Bowls in the history of the league is the guy I'm talking to, Joe Thomas. So it's funny. Everybody thought Brady was washed in New England. He goes to Tampa, gets way better weapons, and doubles his touchdown pass totals the last 2 years. A lot of people thought Matt Stafford, the best years were done. He goes to the Rams with better weapons. Boom, there you go. Wins a Super Bowl. I'm not saying Matt Ryan's Brady or Stafford. I'm throwing out the caution, the yield sign on he's washed. Atlanta's been in rebuild for 3 years. The one time he had a great coordinator, he won the MVP and got to a Super Bowl. And the Colts are really well built. You tell me, I know he's not athletic. I know he doesn't move the pocket, but you had in your career probably 7 different quarterbacks behind you. Is there ever an advantage to having a classic veteran drop back, stay in the pocket presence like Matt Ryan? You tell me as an offensive lineman.
Sorry, I must have had a bad connection. I thought you said 7 quarterbacks behind me because I had like 27 quarterbacks behind me. I played with every single quarterback you can possibly imagine, from Seneca Wallace and Johnny Manziel to the Josh McCowns and Colt McCoys. So I really will say that Matt Ryan really gets me excited if I'm an Indianapolis Colts fan, because when you're evaluating quarterback play, especially veteran quarterback play, and you're saying, how does this guy fit in my system? The number one thing you're going to evaluate is decision making, because that's the most important thing in making an offense run. Obviously, with today's advances in training and taking care of your body and taking care of your arm specifically, we're not seeing the demise in arm strength and arm accuracy that we saw even 10 or 15 years ago. You talk about the Tom Brady method and what that has done for quarterbacks, and with Tom House and these quarterback gurus that are helping you understand how to keep the snap in your throwing motion to be able to continue to have that velocity later on in your career. I think a guy like Matt Ryan, when you put the defense around him, when you put the weapons around him and the running game around him, he still has that decision making, if not the best of his entire career. And now you maybe get another receiver in the draft, or you find a way to give him another weapon, and all of a sudden he looks like a totally different guy. And I think that's what we're going to see with Matt Ryan in Indianapolis.
No, what's really interesting, Joe, he's tied with Matt Stafford for the most game-winning drives since he came into the league. And he's tied with Brady for the most 20-plus touchdown seasons. And those two guys, a lot of people thought were kind of washed, left and won. So I think we have a precedent that if you give Matt Ryan a grown-up offensive line, a stellar run game, and a really good defense in a weird division, it's a weird, weak, wonky division, I think he'll do well. All right, Joe Thomas, it is great seeing you. He's eligible for the Pro Football Hall of Fame next year. He'll be a one and done and get in. It's great seeing you again.
Thanks for having me on, Colin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd, or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.